Welcome to Lair the Alchemist, where we discuss all things heavy metal and hard rock. And on today's episode, Martin Popoff joins me again for the final part in our ZZ Top trilogy discussion. For this episode, we will start with their first album on RCA, the Antenna album, and we will end with their most recent album, La Futura. We will be discussing each album, giving you our favorite songs and some history along the way, and we will give an individual ranking, 0 to 10 for each album, and at the end we will rank all the albums. So Martin, thanks again for joining me here to wrap up our big ZZ Top trilogy discussion.
Sounds good. I love this era of the band. It's going to be a lot of fun talking about it.
Yeah, this is, and this whole process, as I mentioned in the last episode, I checked out a ZZ Top with Recycler. Wouldn't come back to them till Rhythmeen, and then sort of explore. But I wasn't super familiar with a lot of these records, and this made me go back and revisit them and listen to them. And I just, man, I really enjoyed this. But we're gonna get into these records. So, all right, we're gonna start here with Antenna. I don't have these on vinyl, so I'll try to put a little picture of the record here in the corner of the screen. Antenna, 1994. It's their first album on RCA, kind of moving them into moving out of the 80s, moving out of the synth-driven stuff, although it still has a little bit of that sound to it. So what do you think of this album, Martin?
I love Antenna. There's my copy. It is fully signed, but I stupidly got it done in black, so it doesn't look that great. But I love this album. I actually find, so here's what I think about this on the synth end of things. This is really process sounding. It's really bright and hard hitting. It's almost like everybody in the band is Vinnie Paul. It's essentially Vinnie Paul drums, for the drums, for the bass, for everybody on this record, for the guitars. I think this is an example. I did a podcast episode once of my history in 5 songs about keyboard sounds that sound good, or maybe it was electronic drums and keyboards. I can't remember, but basically, I think the production they get on this, even though it's highly processed, sounds amazing. I love the sound of this record. But the big thing that happens on this, so it's 4 years later, they're on RCA. It still goes platinum, which is quite commendable for them. So, Recycler goes platinum earlier on Warner, still part of that whole 80s thing. They've changed the album cover look now. It's not as, it's definitely much more sparse and minimalist. But I think the big thing that you see happening here is, so yeah, number one, a really interesting, sophisticated use of the electronics, which I think sounds great. It's a really headphone sort of sound, really bold and bright, but still heavy. But the big thing that happens is Billy really just comes alive as a blues guitarist. He gets almost like more bluesy than he ever was in the 70s in certain ways, and heavy at the same time. This is just a joy of a record to listen to from a guitar point of view. But my favorite songs on here would be World of Swirl, which is sung by Dusty. I think this has some of Dusty's best singing on it, including Antenna Head. Wow, those 2 songs are so heavy and they just get you so pumped up, because the groove is amazing on these 2 great heavy songs. So Antenna Head with that great Antenna Head chorus on it, and it's kind of cool. You got a song called Antenna Head, but the album's called Antenna, yeah. Right? But yeah, that one and World of Swirl are very heavy. PCH is also heavy. There's really not much on here that isn't quite guitar-y on it. Cover Your Rig is kind of like a slow blues, and there you get to hear this new even more bluesy sort of feel from Billy. And Deal Going Down is sung by Dusty as well. That's kind of an awesome one that has almost like a little bit of a kind of a celebratory hair metal melody to it, kind of thing. So yeah, they are absolutely out on their own in a world doing a very strange thing at this point. It's the thing that when people commended what they did on Eliminator, which, ostensibly was the combining of the blues, so this really old traditional music with a futuristic production. They're really getting it here. It's 3 times as bluesy and 3 times as more exciting from electronic end. And I think it's a really sort of creative, pioneering sound they get on it, and it's a joy to listen to. I would give Antenna an 8.5 out of 10.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's like the production on it is really nice, very well produced, but yet, like you said, it does have this. It's like a really nice combination of blues type playing, but with modern production. Without it, it doesn't sound dated to me. It just sounds like a very well produced, very clean in the sense that you can hear everything. Everything's really sonically in check. So yeah, and I like it for those reasons, and it's sort of a nice combination. I always think of it as like sort of a 70s and 80s best of both worlds. If you like the 70s stuff, but or if you like the 80s stuff, if it's just sort of a nice meld of those two things sonically and from a playing perspective. So I really like Pincushion, Breakaway. I like the sparse arrangement and the really nice chorus harmonies. This is something we've talked about, how we like the dynamic, which they don't seem to do a lot in this era. The beer drinkers and hellraisers, where Billy sings and then Dusty sings. They seem to do that more in the 70s. But the harmonies that they have in their songs, I think the combination of Billy and Dusty's voice singing at the same time is really cool. It reminds me a little bit of Van Halen in the sense of the harmonies are almost a part of the sound. So I just want to shout out how nice ZZ Top's harmonies can be, and this one in particular, like when the harmonies come in the chorus, I think is really cool. I also really like Antenna Head, really cool vocal from Dusty. Cherry Red, I like that one. It reminds me of kind of like where AC/DC would start going during the Black Ice era. This sort of sitting on your porch blues. It's slightly laid back. It's a I don't know. It just reminds me of Black Ice, AC/DC, the type of blues that they would land up doing on that record. And Cover Your Rig is also one that I really like. So I would give this one an 8 out of 10.
Yeah. Yeah, just to mention a couple things. I like your comparison with AC/DC, but I almost think more so of the Razor's Edge with that tight Chris Slade drum sound and that
Yeah.
hard, rapping on a marble table drum sound sort of thing. And
Yeah.
that's what I like about it as well. And Breakaway is kind of interesting because the drum arrangement, the sort of hip hop feel of it actually adds to it. So everything else going on is a traditional ZZ Top ballad, but they just do kind of cool things with the percussive end of it, which also is kind of the case with Fuzzbox Voodoo, where you've got this swampy song. It's very traditional, but there's enough exciting, interesting things going on at the percussion end that elevates it.
Yeah, and the three albums before this, and we talked about this in our last episode. It felt like Afterburner and Recycler, they were trying to replicate the success of On Eliminator. And as you mentioned in the last episode, the sales kept dropping, and by the time they get to Recycler, it's way lower than where they were with Eliminator. And this feels like they just kind of went, all right, let's just do what we want to do. But they didn't do the typical panic thing, like, well, maybe we should go back and try to make a record that sounds exactly like something from the 70s. Instead, they said, hey, you know what? Let's keep some of this well-produced production values that we have, but let's write songs that we like, and let's just make more natural sounding songs. Let's not try to replicate Eliminator for the third time. So to me, this songwriting just feels more natural, but I appreciate the fact that they still kept sort of some of the modern things that they have, but they just went back to a more natural songwriting process, I
Yeah,
guess.
it's almost like they located like the abstracted magic of Eliminator. Like they went
Yeah.
deep deep into the subconscious or unconscious of why Eliminator was exciting, rather than any of the surface reasons, that are maybe unimaginative reasons that maybe Eliminator was great. And they found that it's, somehow it was located somewhere in this mix of blues and electronics, but here it's almost like the most successful version of that you could want out of the guys.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that. Okay, next we move to Rhythmeen. I don't have a whole ton of information on this one. It was released in 1996. I would say they're moving into a different sonic space, maybe you could say. The guitars sound to me like they're down tuned a little bit. They're way more fuzzy and dirty. This would be the album that would get me back into ZZ Top. I can't remember if maybe they had a video, or I think I heard maybe Black Fly. I think I heard on the radio or something. I think that was one of the singles, and it just that's what drew me into this record. So, Martin, Rhythmine, I know you're a fan of this one. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, this is close to one of my, close to a favorite ZZ Top album of mine. There's the cover, not much of a cover. It's ZZ Top has really cool album covers, and they aren't afraid to kind of mix it up either. But so this is a record that is quite heavy. It's more or less relentlessly heavy and riffy and a lot of licks, but bluesy at the same time. It's really mining that space between heavy metal and blues that ZZ does so well. The interesting thing about this, and it always pains me to bring this up, but it's Greg Morrow drumming on this and not Frank Beard.
Oh,
And Greg Morrow also drums on Mescalero and XXX. Um, we'll get to that when we talk about those. But the why that pains me so much is that it's one of my favorite things about the record. The drumming is incredible on this album.
yeah.
His feel and his use of the cymbals and the feathery use of, very light touch on the toms and some of the grace notes on the snare. The drumming is a tour de force on this album, and then it's captured by Joe Hardy, who is the other secret weapon in ZZ Top as of recent years. He's also on at least Antenna, and I think earlier ones as well. But essentially, what you get on this album is the quintessential Joe Hardy sound, which you also get on Kim Mitchell's best later albums as well. So it's this super bright production values that sound. All the sounds sound beautifully processed, but on here it just feels like all the playing is actual very natural analog big jammy playing. But what I love about this album, definitely the heavy songs, which kick off immediately with the title track, Rhythmeen. That is just like a barnstormer of a Black Sabbathy, bluesy, heavy song. But people need to know that when you get deep into this album, past some of the pretty funny sort of songs like Zipper Job and Hairdresser, Vincent Price Blues is one where you really hear this amazing drumming on this album. But when you get near the end, it's got She's Just Killing Me, My Mind Is Gone. Loaded is hilarious. Loaded is so cool on this. That's sung by Dusty. And she's and the last song on it, Humbucking Part 2. So 12th song is called Humbucking Part 2. It sounds like it would be like a tossed off instrumental or something, but it's a super heavy, awesome song with vocals on this album. So yeah, right at the end of this, with those four songs, She's Just Killing Me, super heavy, My Mind Is Gone, with the little sort of the hip hop sort of intro to it, but then it just takes off and explodes like everything does on this record. And then Loaded, hilarious, and Humbucking Part 2. It's almost like the back of this album. I love when this happens with albums where it's like, okay, well, this is a great ZZ Top album. It's fun, everything. And whoa, Deep Purple Abandon reminds me of this. Like you get to the back half of Deep Purple Abandon, it's like, wow, this is a really good Deep Purple album. And you get this feel with Rhythmeen as well. So yeah, so to sum up, I think it's the greatest drumming performance on a ZZ Top album. And I think it's Billy at his absolutely heaviest, most
Mm.
relentless, bluesiest, chunkiest, gorgeously recorded version of him. So I have arguments with people where, is DeGuay or Tejas or Tres Hombres the best ZZ Top album? I don't know. In certain ways, this is pretty immediate and darn entertaining and really heavy, more or less throughout.
So out
So
of
yeah,
10.
10 out of 10 for me on this one.
Nice. I did not know that. So Frank Beard doesn't play at all on the record?
No. And when we start using terms like at all, it kind of puts us in an uncomfortable position because I
He
don't
may
know
have,
across
yeah,
all of these records if the at all completely applies. But
right.
essentially, this is a secret that has been just slowly becoming leaked out. Greg Morrow's been very good about not saying as much, but I've confronted Billy on it a few times, and he doesn't think fast enough to keep the secret, and he sort of lets on, and yeah, that's the great Greg Morrow, and that sort of thing. He's admitted it a few times as
Okay.
well, and other people have talked about it, and the secret's out of the bag. Joe Hardy has possibly mentioned it as well, but yeah, I noticed when you talk to Greg Morrow about it, and it just sort of starts leaking out in credits when you hear people say, the short resume of a guy, and you'll hear his work on ZZ Top and all this. And Greg Morrow ends up on Billy's solo albums later on in that, which is kind of validation. And he has
Yeah.
such an identifiable sound that it's not hard to notice. And yeah, Kim Mitchell, I always, because there's another drummer that's a little similar. But Kim Mitchell, it's either one or two albums. I should know this off the top of my head, but he's also there as well. So this guy just has a really distinct sound, and it's pretty obvious when you hear it. And it's also pretty obvious that there's the 50 things in the vocabulary that you hear on this album, none of those 50 things are part of Frank Beard's vocabulary. So as a
Yeah.
drummer, it's not hard to tell that it's not the same guy.
Yeah. That explains because, okay, that explains a lot for me because Frank Beard is listed, and I saw Greg Morrow's name, but I thought that he was just maybe he just added something here and there. But I also thought, like, wow, the drumming is really like, I didn't realize Frank had it in him.
Yeah,
When I listen
exactly.
to
Yeah.
these stretch of albums, especially when we get to Mescalero, and we'll talk about that when we get to it. But
Is Greg listed anywhere in these credits? I
well,
keep
I was
forgetting
looking
this
on
story.
Wikipedia.
I keep researching this and checking it out, and even to prepare for this show, I found a bunch more stuff to validate it because I keep forgetting the story exactly, like which albums he's on and which he isn't. But I don't remember. Sorry, you were gonna say, is he in here somewhere?
Well, my eyes can't read these small liner notes on the CD, so I tend to go to Wikipedia to
Yeah.
get my general information, and it lists Frank Beard, but then it also lists Greg Morrow
Yes, I found it.
below it.
So I'll tell you exactly what it says. So under extra super solid thanks, there's a whole bunch of names, and one of them is Greg Gangs, Clangs, and Percussion Thangs Morrow.
All right.
With ZZs for instead of S's on what was it? Gangs, Clangs, and Percussion Thangs.
Okay.
But yeah, he's basically drumming the whole album. So when you say at all, I think there's there is the odd bit of layered in electronic percussion,
Yeah.
I think, here and there on this album. So that, I guess, technically isn't either of those two guys, but I get the feeling that Frank's probably nowhere on this album because what's the point if
Right.
Greg's going to be the drummer on most of it,
Or
right?
it's some minor thing like a cymbal swell here or something. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. ZZ's kind of a lovably lazy band. So it's like if we don't have to call Frank in from the ranch or wherever he is, we won't bother, right? But maybe they do the kind of thing and say, well, legally to have him on there, he's got to do something. So maybe he's on there for some. I don't know, but yeah, this is just one of those industry not that well kept secrets that was kept a secret for a long, long time.
yeah.
and it wasn't probably a secret, but people love these guys so much that they don't want to talk about it. I think
Yeah,
is more than anything. It's like, man, we love ZZ Top. This pains us that this is the case. Let's just not talk about it, right?
yeah. Well, for me though, this album, besides the drumming that jumps out at me, the thing that really jumps out at me is the guitar sound on this record. The guitar, you described it very well, heavy, chunky. It has a distorted sound to it that, man, it's hard for me. If I had a chance to sit down with Billy Gibbons, one of the top questions I would ask is, what did you do differently during this album and the next couple records here with your sound? Because it has this very uh speaker fuzzy, like the speakers getting ready to explode, like type of sound. It's not processed, it's very organic and earthy and hands in the dirt type of feel to it. But man, oh man, it is so heavy sounding and so just like lots of bottom end to it. And his playing on this whole record is, you'll often hear, if you're a non-musician, you'll sometimes hear drummers or musicians in general using terms like on the beat, behind the beat, laid back. If you want a definition of laid back guitar playing, listen to this record, because there's all these times where he just bends these notes and it just sounds like he's so far behind on the beat, but it's just he's there. It's there. He's just so elastic, and it's like stretching and moving the beat. It's just, oh man, it's just fantastic, and I just love it. So for me, the guitar sound is a huge, huge part of this record. Rhythmeen, love that song. Black Fly, I love Vincent Price blues. This is an example of this. He does this on some of the upcoming records where they're these slow, heavy blues songs, but they're not like slow. I don't know. They're not like some kind of old-fashioned kind of slow droney blues thing. This is just like stoner doom. It's almost doom metal. It's like it's so crushing, and it's so heavy. And I just love the, we talked about this way back in the first episode, the way ZZ Top takes the blues but twists it and does their own little takes on it. And this is a great example of the chorus. It's like it's a regular blues, and when the chorus comes in, it makes this odd like harmonic shift or something that it just pulls your ear in. So I love that song, love the chorus in it. Bang Bang, I love that one. The way it breaks down in the chorus of the song, and it's just like the rhythm underneath him, and he's doing those chunky, dead notes on his guitar and everything. She's just killing me, fantastic. And you mentioned it too. I love Humbucking Part Two, this sludgy guitar sound again. I mean, this came out in '96. I don't know, could grunge and sort of the sludgy guitar sounds of Seattle, could that have crept into the psyche of Billy Gibbons? I don't know, but it fits right in there with sort of that heavy '90s grunge type of guitar sound. This could stand up and get in a boxing ring with any of those any of those bands and hold its own. So yeah, I love this record. It's the album that got me back into ZZ. I'm going to give it a 9.5 out of 10.
It might be my favorite blues guitar album of all time. I did a podcast episode called something like making the blues interesting for metalheads, right? And I talk about bands like Status Quo with their boogie sound, and Clutch.
Yeah.
Clutch is very Clutch. This is a very Clutch album, really. This
Yeah.
really sounds like a Clutch album. But and ZZ was always part of that, even in the 70s and the 80s. But for almost like pure blues that can compete with any blues album out there. And I use that term loosely because again, it's heavy metal, riffy, licky blues, and like you say, gorgeously, hugely recorded. But I'll still call that. I'll still say that this can compete with any album in terms of blues guitar that's ever been made.
Yeah, and we talked about this in the first one, and I think you're on the same page with me on this, that I don't like just sort of stock blues as a da 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 da, like that kind of da 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 da, that kind of blues. I don't like that. I like interesting blues that has weird twists and turns to it. and you get that all over this record. So that's a very great point. That if you had a young metalhead or a metalhead of anybody, and they were and you wanted to sort of use this as a gateway to the blues, this would be a good record for that, because it's very heavy, it's very swampy and messy and dirty, and has a little bit of an evil sound to it, at dark
Yeah.
evil sound to it at times. So yeah, just I'm not
Yeah.
going to argue with that, about it being just
Yeah.
a fantastic blues
It's a
record.
good point when you say like showing something to young metalhead, because you might say, he might ask, why do people like the blues so much? What is the special thing, the specific special thing about the blues where people like treat it like evangelistically, and it's like going to church, right? Kind of thing. What is it about the blues? Obviously every black metal, everything's got a certain special things about it, right? But why do people talk about the blues so reverently? And I would say, go to the Reverend, go to Billy Gibbons,
Yeah.
go to this record, and the magic of the blues is there. But of course it sounds fairly different from an old blues album from the 40s or 50s.
Yeah, and again, he's the reverend, because he's so tapped into the spiritual side of the blues, this sort of unconscious, uh, he's absorbed into his DNA this long tradition and history of the blues, and he's able to have it come out in his own unique voice, which is what I love about it. You hear he's definitely a blues guitar player, but he has such his own sort of take and sound on it, that I think
Yeah.
it's just great.
One last point on that, because I was thinking, okay, who are the other blues guys? When you hear Eric Clapton or BB King or somebody way up the fretboard making those annoying loud dog whistle
Yeah.
single clean note things, right? Billy Gibbons comes from a power trio who's trying to entertain on stage with just three guys. So you hear Dusty talking about, oh, occasionally I have to be the rhythm guitarist and play chords, but Billy Gibbons also comes from that Chuck Berry school where part of playing solos, when you have to play solos, your mind tells you have to also be the rhythm guitarist at the same
Yeah.
time, because there's only three of you up there. So when Billy does licks or solos, there's a lot of like double notes and playing lower down the fretboard and playing the fatter strings and all that stuff. So that is exciting to a metalhead as well, when you hear blues guys doing that, rather than just way
Yeah.
up, that stupid high note that is supposedly beautiful, and to me it's just annoying, right?
Yeah.
Going way up to the end, and like, oh, look at the resolution of this solo is way up here, right? Billy instead is just like growling around like a junkyard dog, all over the fretboard for all of these licks. So part of that is the trio thing of saying, we all have to do stuff on stage here, so the bottom end doesn't drop out of what we're doing.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, XXX. This came out in 1999. The title refers to the band's 30th anniversary. Produced just by Billy. It's the first album without Bill Ham helping them out, who was with them since the beginning. There's 4 live cuts at the end of the record, with a slightly heavier version of Antenna's Pincushion, retitled as Sin Cushion.
Sin
Thoughts on
Pusher.
this one?
Sin Pusher.
Sin Pusher, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, so this record is kind of the main one of the 90s records that people tend to put down. And they're putting it down for the obvious reasons. It offended people that they would redo Pincushion as Sin Pusher, and it's not as good, and it's the live version sort of thing. And also of this weird little live thing added on, there's an intro that goes into it, but you also get what are the songs that are let's see, belt buckle, yeah, Let Me Be Your Teddy Bear and Belt Buckle are a little more of a sort of standard, unambitious, bluesy things. So all of a sudden, with this live thing, you're starting to think about the live side of Fandango, and you're sort of like
Mm,
not on board, and you're not championing it, and you're going, "Why is this here?" It breaks up the album. We've got a redo song, and the album is not very long, and they're slowly moving more into their we kind of really like our comedic songs. We're starting to put a few more novelty-ish sort of things on it. So you've got something that everybody kind of hated on this, Crucifix a Flat.
yeah.
Just a weird title, and just kind of a weird eccentric song. Now, so I don't forget, I do want to mention Made into a Movie on this album. Okay, people should go listen to this song. So it's kind of like a slow blues ballad, but this is one of the greatest drumming performances you'll hear in all time
Yes.
on a blues song. The fills are breathtaking on this
Yes.
song. The stuff he does between the beat, and again, this is Greg Morrow doing this. So it's an absolutely sterling, amazing, amazing drum performance on a slow blues. Poke Chop Sandwich is a pretty cool one. So that's the opening track, and that's a very here you're starting to get the band sounding really kind of eccentric and wild and gruff, moving towards Mescalero. That's Billy told me the funny story of that one. That's he was playing with some old blues drummer, jamming with some old black blues guy, and this guy never used his floor tom, and it's because his wife would make him lunch to take to the studio, and it would be like a wrapped up sandwich, and that's where he'd put his drink and his lunch, on the floor tom. So he never used his floor tom. So the stories about this old legendary old drummer, storing his lunch on his floor tom and never using it, and that's his poke chop sandwich that his wife made for him to take to the studio, kind of thing. But yeah, I think most of these songs before you get to the live stuff are pretty good. They're pretty entertaining, but they're considered a little bit too flippant and casual and jokey. And then the album's short, and then you get the live thing. So this is the one people say is of these, it's the one I can complain about.
Out of 10.
I would give this a 7 out of 10. It's still pretty darn entertaining.
Yeah, this one for me really falls flat, which is a shame after Rhythmeen. I don't know. I don't know what it is. For me, it's, I guess, just in the songwriting. I really can't pinpoint it anywhere else. I do like the poke chop sandwich. I think that's really cool. And I'm glad you mentioned Made into a Movie. I absolutely love that song. And the drumming in it, like you said, is just absolutely incredible. It is this slow, laid back blues song, and these drum fills are like, it feels like they're not going to make it to the beat, but they do. And there's one in particular where he just does this
Yeah.
thing, and it is all about feel. It is
The way
like,
you describe that sounds like it's a different one than what I'm thinking of. I'm thinking the one that goes
yeah,
so he does this point counterpoint thing with
yeah,
these two snare whacks, and then the bass, and then the snare, and it's out of time with the song. It's like it's a polyrhythmic feel. It's
yeah,
he's
yeah.
doing like I don't know, like a 3/4 time on this very strong, slow 4/4 song for this fill, and he runs it out for like most of a bar, or goes over the end of the bar or something, and then it collapses into the thing. So yeah,
Yes, this very sort of loose, over top of the beat drum thing that fills and stuff that go through the whole, almost like we mentioned Frank Zappa earlier, reminds me of like Terry Bozzio. He would do these super long drum fills that would sort of hang in the air. They just feel like they're
yeah.
suspended in the air for a moment till the chords come crashing in. But and I just love, man, Billy's like voice. It's so like whiskey soaked, and you just, Texas, dry Texas,
Yeah.
tumbleweedy type of
Yeah.
type of voice, and it's like the microphone is really close to his mouth or something. You know what I mean? It's like, it's just, oh man. And the chorus of the song is just fantastic. So if man, definitely a top 10 favorite ZZ Top song. Might even creep into my top 5. Love this song. Fortunately, the rest of the album falls flat, really flat for me. So this squeaks out a 4 out of 10. I feel bad though because I so love Made into a Movie, but
Yeah,
there you go.
yeah.
All
Just
right, so
before we move on, I wanted to mention like how I constantly, when I talk about these records, I want to remind myself of this Greg Morrow story. So I found like a good long Reddit post on it, right? And a few of the things that are said here. So I'll just quote this. So first of all, I need to say that this is all conjecture, although rather well supported. Don't take it as the gospel truth. That's the way everybody feels about this Greg Morrow story. He goes, first time I've seen somebody say that it doesn't sound like Frank playing on Rhythmeen was in this discussion. The apparent confirmation happened right in this very forum. But like I say, I mean, Billy's told me himself. I've hit him up maybe even twice on this whole topic, right? So who actually played the drums? My money would be on Greg Morrow. He gets credited for percussion on both this album and Mescalero, plus did the drumming on Billy's first solo album, Perfectamundo, and a few tracks on the Big Bad Blues. He's clearly an accomplished drummer, as you can see in this video. In fact, he's a very in-demand session guy. And from the sound of it, he prefers a snappy snare sound, just like the one you hear on Rhythmeen. A podcast featuring him is advertised with the lines, "You've heard Greg's drum work from ZZ Top, Luke Bryan, Casey Musgraves, and more. He also plays drums on a few tracks from the 2002 tribute album, Sharp Dressed Man, LaGrange, Legs, and Just Got Paid." I'd like to go listen to those and listen to LaGrange. And to my ears, it sounds quite similar to the drumming on Rhythmeen. So that'd be a neat exercise, right? Go play
yeah.
that. Although, of course, confirmation bias may be at work. And then, other guys are putting in other links. Once you use Google with different search combinations, you can dig up old comments that seem to solidify my suspicion. ZZ Top gets busy on first album since 2003. The question is how. Look for the name Greg Morrow. So here's a Billy quote, I guess. It says, "Look for the name Greg Morrow in the credits somewhere when it comes out. Greg's the drummer you hear on the last few records." So that may even be from one of my interviews. I don't know. Another post that seems to confirm it, the Alt Country Club 33 and a third. And then there's this Facebook posting source. Then there's some French that gets translated. So this must be from a Billy interview. Let's see, blah, blah, blah. Let's see, translated by Deep L. "I'm proud to have participated and realized a little kid's dream by sharing a few minutes of recorded music with the giant Greg Morrow, drummer, who's greatly tickled my neurons in the past because he provided all the drums on ZZ Top's albums Rhythmeen, XXX, and Mescalero." Emphasis by me. So tickled my neurons. So this is obviously Billy talking. This is Billy. So this is a quote from a Billy interview that was first in French, translated into. So there he is coming out and saying it. And then it says, "Joe Hardy also indirectly hinted at it in this interview. What's the difference working with Billy versus working with ZZ Top?" And then there's a big long quote that I again printed out because I always have to confirm this stuff when I'm thinking about it in my head, because I learn these things and then I forget them. If I don't talk about them for 2 or 3 years, right?
Well, this may all make sense
Yeah.
because I didn't know this before this, and in my notes here for Made into a Movie, I put a little thing here: Frank Beard's greatest drum performance? Question mark. So
Yeah.
even I
Yeah.
was like, "This, whoa, where's this Frank Beard been this whole time?" So now this
Yeah.
all makes sense when you say this because yeah, the drums. Yeah, it all makes sense when we put this in and when you really think about it. So
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
okay, so Mescalero 2003 final release on RCA Records. What are your thoughts
Okay.
on
So for
Mescalero?
me, what you get with Mescalero is all the things you might have liked about XXX amplified on a longer album with more entertaining, interesting songs. This to me is a laugh riot, start to finish. Billy's voice is so deep on this. They are so bluesy on this, but it's not like the relentless one style of recording that you get on Rhythmeen. Here you get lots of different ear candy and interesting things and little novelty touches. Like I say, a lot of kind of comedy on it as well. Lots and lots of songs. And again, what I love about it, just like Rhythmeen, it starts off so strong with the title cut. Mescalero is such a gorgeous,
Yeah.
strange, complicated. It's got the marimbas or the vibes in it. It's got Billy's voice so low in it, and the guitars are so guttural. It's not a heavy metal song, but just just the performance of it is so heavy. But then you go through a bunch of songs with this kind of like weird minimalist sort of, and again, so this is a Greg Morrow drum performance album, but it's not a tour de force the way Rhythmeen is. He's doing things where you almost think in many places it could be Frank. Because there are some things that are a little more simpler on it. But the other thing I love about this album is when you get to the end and you've got songs like Dusted and Liquor. Liquor is hilarious. Like Liquor, what a strange, cool little song that one is. People definitely should check that one out. And Peace. So it's got this just totally boring little title, Peace. But it's the heaviest song on the album. It's sung by Dusty amazingly. He just does such a great roaring Fred Turner from BTO job on this song, and it's really heavy. But most of the album is the short, kind of funny and cool songs with really like super innovative production. I think the thing about this album that I love so much is that the production is a tour de force. It's the same reason I love Antenna, and Rhythmeen for that matter. But there's nothing conservative about the production. All the tones on this album are just really strange and weird and cool and interesting. And so it's them really being super creative, but also doing it with these short, catchy songs that are often quite funny. I think it's absolutely entertaining start to finish. I played it many, many times. It just never gets tiring. It's got all sorts of funny little turns of phrase and stupid, like alligator and Two Ways to Play and Punk Ass Boyfriend, Stacking Paper, Me So Stupid. There are
Yeah.
songs on here that the band got actually a little stick for being almost too silly. But I think just the performance and the singing and the production are such a tour de force that it's just a super impressive album. I'm giving it a 10 out of 10.
Nice. Yeah, I really like this one. I like the little extra touches on it. I think it's fun. It sounds like they're having fun. The title track, I really like that. It's got that growling like bass sound
Yeah.
there in it. That's fantastic. And you mentioned already it has a marimba in it, which I guess as I was reading this, the story was they were in the sessions, they took a break to go get lunch at where else but a Mexican restaurant, and they heard a father and son playing marimba and invited them into the studio. Total ZZ Top story, right? If I have this dream of someday driving through Texas in the middle of nowhere. You pull off somewhere to go get a bite to eat at a Mexican restaurant, and there sitting in the corner is ZZ Top. I mean, it's so ZZ Top, them at a Mexican restaurant. But love that song. Going So Good is one I like too, and it has pedal steel in it again, sort of adding this some interesting different little sounds going on. I like Two Ways to Play. It has almost like a 90s heavy rock riff type feel to it. The riff is like pretty heavy in that one. Alligator is fun. This one has accordion in it, another sort of interesting kind of Texas or Mexican accordion like sound to it. Peace, I also really like that one. It's a heavy one with Dusty's vocals. What Would You Do? Although the pitch correction, what do they call it? Auto tune on the vocals is a little bit strange. I think it's done as an effect here, and it sort of works. Again, there's a lot of songs on this record that sound fun, like they were having fun in the studio. Like, let's put this on The Voice, and they sort of all laughed about it and smiled, and they put it on. And I absolutely love Que Lastima, sung completely in Spanish. Kind of surprising that ZZ Top, I mean, they have a lot of Spanish titles, to their songs and here and there. Is this the first and only song that they've sung completely in Spanish? If it is
Yeah.
surprising that they haven't done others, it's a beautiful ballad type song, sort of a ballad, kind of rolling along type of song. I just love it, and I was sort of surprised that when I was researching this, I thought it was maybe some sort of traditional Mexican folk song or something, which I don't think it is. I think it's a song that they wrote themselves. If you see the translation of the lyrics, it's also funny. It translates into some funny stuff. So love this record. Would probably give it a. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. Okay,
Cool.
so that brings us to the last ZZ Top record, their most recent one, La Futura from 2012. It's sadly the last album that they've put out, and the last album, Dusty would pass away. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I always pronounce it
La
La
Futura, yeah,
Futura,
I'm
or
sure
something
that's
like
what it
that.
is.
So the funny thing about this one, unfortunately, I'm not a big fan of it, and I'm not a big fan of it in a similar way. I'm not a big fan of XXX, and it's because to me, like, look at those album covers; they're kind of similar, right? The color scheme, anyways. What I find about this record is it's the shorter, less exciting version of Mescalero. Um, I think the songs are more conservative. They're more straightforward. They don't take as many chances. They're less exciting. There's less of them. And so that's kind of a similar thing that I feel about XXX. I just feel like it's almost like the EP version of the leftovers from Mescalero. Which is pretty harsh, but I mean, there's only 10 songs on it. So right off the bat, you're in a defense mode. It's like you're playing catch up. For you to love this album, you've got to love 7 of the songs on it. Totally love 7 or 8 songs on it, right? Because you're already ticked off that it's short. There's the whole Rick Rubin story where you knew that wasn't going to work, and it didn't. I mean, Rick Rubin and Billy got together, and they just didn't hit it off. And so Rick Rubin's out of the picture pretty soon on the thing, although he's listed as the producer. But Gots to Get Paid is amazing. It's a masterpiece. But you're kind of ticked off a little bit that they didn't exactly write the thing. It's kind of a collab with sort of a hip hop song, but it's the best thing on the whole album. So that's the other thing that was annoying. I believe it was an advanced single, so you were hearing this early, right? And it turns out to be the best song of the album. So all of a sudden you're ticked off about that as well. But yeah, I think Consumption is the other one that's just a rewrite of Lagrange. It's boring.
Yeah.
It's just here we go doing a Lagrange thing again. Too bluesy, it's too easy, manana, slow. Yeah, 10 songs, 40 minutes. Over You, slow ballad. Heartache and Blue is kind of a cool bluesy rocker. I mean, it's bluesier than Mescalero, I think, in total. Big Shiny Nine is kind of cool. It's an up tempo sort of rocker. What was the other one? Chartreuse. Chartreuse was see that's basically your microcosm of everything that's wrong with this album. It sounds like kind of a phoned in conservative version of cool later ZZ Top. So
Yeah.
it's you're kind of on board, but you're going, I hope the rest of the record's better than this, and then it kind of wasn't. So that's kind of my problem with La Futura. Unfortunately, I got to give it a 7 out of 10. But it's got 10 songs on it. Mescalero had 17.
Yeah.
And the Mescalero songs were all more exciting in general. So Mescalero is just like by leaps and bounds, just pushing this thing into the ground. It's just got so much not going well for it. If you're gonna make a record like this, to win you over with this kind of more conservative, more safe version of what they'd been doing, you know, you better make it 65 minutes, not 40 minutes, because the material is not blowing you away like bloody liquor off of Mescalero was, sort of thing. So there you go. Just underwhelmed, unfortunately. And, you know, there was the EP thing that confused matters as well, that came out around this time. I don't know, before or after. I don't know how that worked. So there was, I think, a couple extra songs or whatever. But yeah, it's just you know, don't turn in a 10 song record of 40 minutes if it's not going to be 10 bangers like Gots to Get Paid was.
Yeah. This is much like XXX was to Rhythmeen, a kind of a letdown. It's the same thing here coming off of Mescalero. This is a letdown. Uh, for all the reasons that you described, the songs, it's short, like you said, and the songs just aren't as good. But I do like Heartache and Blue. That has a cool old school blues feel to it. I really like Flying High because I'm a sucker for big hooks. This sounds like almost like a song Russ Ballard or somebody could have written. I
Yeah.
believe it
That's
was,
actually, that was the one I meant instead of Chartreuse. I think that was the other advanced single, I believe.
and it was
I
somehow associated with the rocket ship launch or something. One of the
Okay.
spaces
I
we
think we
played
were
it.
hearing that and Chartreuse before the album
Yeah,
came out, I think.
it's very kind of on ZZ Top like because the chorus is very poppy and
Yeah.
very Russ Ballard since you've been gone,
Yeah.
like vibe to it. But I like It's Too Easy Manana. I like these slow blues. I love when Billy sings that, and I love his playing all over that. But yeah, in general, and did I mention "Gots to Get Paid"? Yeah, that one's cool. But in general, it sort of missed the mark and feels like a letdown after Mescalero. So for me, 5 out of 10, 4.5 out of 10. All right. So how would you rank these last five albums that we discussed here?
Yeah, and again, to wade into territory that I'm not sure about, but I'll open myself up to criticism. This is not one that people talk about Greg Morrow is drumming on it, and it doesn't sound like Greg Morrow. So I guess this is Frank Beard throughout this record. You know, I don't know how much is processed on this record as well, but I think this is the return of Frank. And like I say, even on Mescalero, you aren't getting the true essence of amazing, should be made into a movie Greg Morrow on that record as much. I think he pulls back on that record. So yeah, to rate all these, I would say boy, it's really close for me with Mescalero and Rhythmeen. I mean, they are two of my top, probably four favorite ZZ Top albums of all time. So, but I'll go. You know what? I think my heart tells me I got to go with Mescalero as the best one, and then I'll go Rhythmeen. Even though our Contrarians episode, I did pick Rhythmeen as the greatest ZZ Top album, but I'm going to go Mescalero, Rhythmeen, Antenna, XXX, then La Futura last.
Okay, same. Rhythmine and Mescalero. I'm gonna I'm gonna go Mescalero for my number one. Rhythmine, very very close. Number two, number three, Antenna. These two I could flip them in and out. I would probably say La Futura and then XXX, but they
Yeah.
sort of feel the same way to me. Kind of disappointments, but
Yeah.
okay, there you go. We've wrapped up our epic ZZ Top trilogy, going through all the ZZ Top albums. I'll leave in the description down below the previous videos that we've made. So if you haven't seen those, go back and watch those. If you're a brave soul, maybe go back. You've got the time. Go back to our first one and follow us through all the ZZ Top albums. This was a really fun thing to do. So Martin, thank you for this. This was great fun.
Cool. Yes, definitely. I think we solve the world's problems as they pertain to ZZ Top. That's for sure.
Okay, all right. So thanks to Martin. Thank you all out there. Let us know in the comments down below. What do you guys think of this era of ZZ Top, this later era of the band? What are your favorite records? What are your favorite songs from this era? Let us know in the description down below. And make sure you check out Martin's stuff. I'll leave a link to Martin's website in the description. Got anything coming up here in the future you want to let everybody know about, Martin?
Boy, the David Bowie book is in a month early, so I've been signing and sending those out. So you could see that that's the top book at my site. I know it's kind of expensive, but it's it's the nicest book anybody's ever done for me. So so that's the David Bowie. It's called Bowie at 75. So that's in. The Angel book is now back in print. I got copies of that as well. Although my website says sold out, it's a long story. It takes a while to get my site changed. People can contact me if they want the Angel book, but people have been asking me about that one for months and months and months. So I actually have that in now. It's redone through my publisher in the UK, Weimer. So yeah, I'll just leave you with those two things. Bowie and Angel are the two books that I'm doing a lot of right now, and they're the two new ones.
Fantastic. All right, everybody. Thank you again, Martin, and thank you to everybody out there. Until we see you again, make sure you rock hard, ride free.